So if there are any questions, I think we need this one. So if there are any questions, then just raise your hand and we can throw this out to you guys. So what I'd like to do is start by asking Virgilio a couple of questions here or there. So since we're talking about state-sponsored cryptocurrency, we have heard that China is working on something. And I believe the rumor is that there are plans to have that be backed by gold, and they've been buying a lot of gold. Tell us what you know about that.
All right, so my name is Virgilio. I'm Vice President of International Affairs for Gate Technology, top 20 crypto exchange, as Richard mentioned. First off, I want to start off by thanking Richard. This is the second time that I've been up here. And he's actually the man who gave me my first shot on the big stage. So I want to thank him for that. That was 2 years ago. And so I've been living in China for about 10 years now. I got into Bitcoin about 5 years, and I've been working in crypto for China-based companies for about 4 years. So your question was about China Coin. So China Coin has been in development for 3 years or something like that. And I live in Shenzhen, which is the fourth largest city in China. Electronics capital of the world, so probably all of this electronics equipment was produced in China. And Shenzhen was actually supposed to be the first city where the China coin was supposed to be tested. That was announced like 2 years ago. So I haven't heard any other news on China coin. So that's what's up with China coin.
Tell us about this. What's the deal with ICOs? Are people? It seems like people are still participating in ICOs in China. Is it true?
So last year was a very chaotic year in China. It was chaotic from the beginning, from January all the way through the whole year. And some of you may know that there was an announcement by the government there in September that said that ICOs are no longer allowed. And that also kind of avalanched into crypto exchanges closing in China. So the way things work there is there's a lot of self-regulation in China. A lot of things aren't explicitly told. So a lot of businesses there kind of self-regulate to the extreme. So there wasn't actually an official announcement from the government that crypto exchanges should close in China. They were just strongly advised that it might not be a good idea to continue fiat to crypto business in China. So what happened in September was that all of the fiat to crypto exchanges closed down. They rebranded, sent a lot of their teams to South Korea, Japan, Singapore. But the problem was that you cannot find 100 to 200 developers in these other countries for the labor cost that you can in China. So they're kind of still tethered to China in a lot of ways. So in terms of what happened there with the community, you might know that the BTC CNY trading pair was the most dominant pair for 3 or 4 years in China, in the world. If China sneezed, the price crashed. If China smiled, the price skyrocketed. So obviously during that time, a huge community was built up there. And when the fiat crypto businesses closed, these people, if you want a crypto, you're going to crypto. So they moved to OTC, they moved to Telegram, they moved to peer-to-peer services. But what happened was that the rest of the people who were like, how do I use WeChat Pay? How do I use CNY to buy Bitcoin? There was this huge pool of interest still there. So very funny, what happened was that there's been a huge investment in crypto media in China. So, but actually, these crypto medias are just pumping whatever coin pays them. But there's huge investment. I think there was $100 million RMB investment in some crypto media. So the demand is there, the interest is there. But there's just a huge pool of people trying to find out how to get shitcoins.
So if you're in China and you've heard a lot about cryptocurrency, for example, Bitcoin, how do you actually get your hands on it?
So, like, you got to go to a back alley. You got to look for a guy. No, I mean, it's just like there's still ways, but people just have to, investigate, ask friends. And I don't know if people know there's an app called WeChat. WeChat is like the 4th largest, most downloaded app in the world. And it's a combination of everything. But the thing is that WeChat groups are capped at 500 people. So you can't add more than 500 people into a group. So in China, it's kind of like this thing like, Richard, can you get me into the cool club, a cool WeChat group where they're talking about the latest shitcoin that I can buy or I can buy Bitcoin. So everyone's trying to find that group that can get them what they need. So that's kind of how it works there.
So is there some type of concern that if they are buying too much Bitcoin, or maybe they can't, is there any kind of limit on how much they might buy, that it would be illegal, or they might get in trouble in some way?
So the thing is, like, it's all gone underground now. So, I mean, in my opinion, what the government, the way that they see things is if it gets to a certain point that it makes so much money, then they'll start paying attention to it. Or if there's a huge scam that happened, which what happened last spring and summer, which is actually, they were kind of justified to do what they did in September, because in last spring and summer in China, there was no place on earth that had more ICOs or scams than China. It was unbelievable. It was like every day there was some, conference or something pumping another ICO. The thing is that it was just extreme, the reaction of it, and it wasn't a lot of input from the industry or anything when that happened. So if it doesn't get to a certain threshold, they don't care about it.
Okay, so if you manage to keep it somewhat modest, your activity, then you might get away with it, is what I understand.
Pretty much.
So in that kind of climate where there might be, say, a little bit of activity tolerated, how do you actually make sense of the fact that some of the biggest projects and biggest companies in this sector are actually Chinese?
So I mean, like ICO projects?
Well, we have mining, we have ICOs.
What
do we have,
well,
actually?
specifically, there hasn't been any major ICOs come out of China since then. I think there's so many now, I can't follow them all, even though I work at an exchange. The last one I remember, I'm not even going to say the name. So there was one that really, they really pushed the limit. Actually, they went over the limit, and that was in September, in the midst of the government announced in September. These guys were like out there, having a huge conference. So I haven't heard of any huge ICOs coming out of China. It's really kind of tamped down. If you're talking about exchanges, that's done. If you're talking about mining, so mining is kind of a different situation. So mining, the exchanges were very high-profile targets. They were in the big cities. They dealt with, exchange with the national currency. But the mining, even now, with all the crypto mining in China, there's still a huge glut of electricity in China. So when it comes to mining, the way that it developed was that all these crypto miners went to these very rural places. They went, okay, I'm going to buy all of the electricity that you can give me if I'm going to fill that warehouse with all the machines that fit in it. If there's not a warehouse, I'm going to build a warehouse. I'm going to employ people from this village or whatever to build this facility. So there's local governments, there's the power companies, there's the people that are now employed at these places. So there's a lot more angles and kind of pushback. So if we're going to close down this business, okay, where's the money going to come from? So it's more complicated. I don't see any major things happening in terms of mining in China for a couple of years.
So tell us, as people who live in Western Europe, what are the most notable, say, people and companies that we should pay attention to, both the more established ones in China, as well as some that you think are lesser known and we should be paying more attention to?
Gate.io.
Go ahead, let's start there. Tell us about Gate.
So Gate was established in 2013. We have offices in China. We have offices in South Korea. We're a very decentralized team. We have over 2 million traders on our exchange. We do an average trading volume of 100 million to, depending on the market, we've had a peak of 700 million per day. We currently are expanding, so that's why I'm here talking to everybody. So, in China, anybody know how many foreigners there are in China? And foreigners, I mean, non-Chinese citizens that are 20%? 3%? 50 million? Okay, so it's less than a million. So that's like 0.00001% of the population. And that counts non-Chinese citizens. So that counts Koreans, that counts Japanese. Anyone know what country is number one? South Korea. Number two, Japan. Number three, the United States. And the United States has around 100,000. So when you think about foreigners in China, it's like people that look like us, there's probably less than 300,000. Now, when you think about foreigners who work in crypto, there's a handful. So that's one of the issues, except for Bitmain, who's done a fantastic job in global expansion and global strategy. It's been a very difficult task for crypto companies in China to get their message out, to get their story out. So that's one of the main things that we're doing right now is just telling people about Gate and telling people who we are. In terms of other companies, I mean, they're our competitors. I don't want to really talk about them. Miners, I think Bitmain is really far ahead of everyone. So before I worked at Gate, I used to work for the 4th largest crypto exchange in China and the 2nd largest manufacturer of crypto mining machines as well. So I used to compete with Bitmain, and it's just, for all the crap people give Bitmain a lot, they're a really solid company. They've done a lot of things right. And when I was competing against them, it's just, they were just always really far ahead. And it's very difficult to catch up to an entrenched dominant player like they are now. So the other players, I see them in China in terms of mining, really behind with what Bitmain is doing.
So some of us might say that Bitmain is a threat because they become too big, in terms of being a mining company, and they have maybe too much influence. What are your thoughts about that?
I wouldn't say they're a threat. I think, like I said, I have a lot of respect for what they've done. Being a competitor to them, I sat down with meetings with them, when I was at the height of the scaling wars and all of that. So I think they've done a lot of good. I think there's been a lot of, obviously a lot of people don't like what they're doing or decisions they make. That's part of the, part of business.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be part of that group.
So let's open it up for questions. Are there any questions in the audience?
Why would you not be part of the group? Why would you not be part of the group?
In terms of, calling Bitmain a threat,
No?
that was it. Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
So in the bigger picture, is the Wild West atmosphere in China going to do damage to blockchain, crypto, the whole thing?
Wild East.
I'm sorry.
I think China's settled. I think China's settled. They're out of the game. They decided they're not gonna. Well, the government decided they're not gonna allow, crypto exchanges and all of that. And which is really amazing, really, really amazing if you think about where China was in 2013, 2014, the dominant position that they were. They could have been, they could have been like the leaders on the hill for a very long time, and they said no. So what's happening in South Korea, what's happening in Japan, is just, they're, in my opinion, China's kind of lagging behind seriously in terms of what's happening with crypto and blockchain technology.
I have the suspicion that it could easily come back, but what's holding them back is the traditional financial system that they see it possibly as a threat to their own currency. What are your thoughts?
I don't think it's going to come back.
No.
I think, they just made the decision in September. They're not going to turn around. That's not how they work. They're not that quick. So if it happens, I don't see anything happening for at least 2 or 3 years.
Anyone else? Other questions? Yeah. Oh, thanks.
So what does that then mean to all the projects that say they're state-sponsored or state-endorsed in China?
Yeah, they're state endorsed, and I mean they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and I mean I'm not a big fan of state endorsed blockchain projects, but I think that's the same in a lot of places. They got bank endorsed blockchains, you got country endorsed blockchains. So I mean, if you have a project where the leader of the project is going on stage and saying, yeah, the government can come and change my blockchain whenever they want, it's not really attractive to me. Maybe it's attractive to a lot of other people.
One more question.
So there's a movement towards away from proof of work blockchains, right, which takes a lot of power away from these mining companies in China. What do you think the reaction will be as that gets stronger?
Well, I need a more background on your question. So there's a move away from POW. Can you give me more context on that?
So people are fighting against this idea that you have to use a huge amount of energy, which is required from proof of work. So there's a lot of new proposals out for new consensus models that don't require the same amount of energy. And that's the business model built around a lot of these mining companies in China. So do you have any insight into their strategy around these shifts in how blockchains are doing their consensus, which doesn't require giant mining farms in China?
So I kind of have a longer perspective on these kinds of questions because the mining industry in China has been developing since 2011, 2012. So, I mean, they have established business models, and these changes aren't going to happen overnight. So I think proof of work is here to stay for now. I don't see that changing anytime soon. And if there is a change, I think the companies or the miners have grown big enough and smart enough that if they see a change coming down the road, they'll be able to adjust.
So thanks very much. We'll move on to the next part of the program. But before we say goodbye to Virgilio, is there any kind of last words, something that we should take away in terms of what's special about Gate and what you're doing at Gate? What should we look out for? What's coming up next?
So the thing that people really, the main feedback that we really get from our traders on Gate is that it's easy to use, straightforward. You can get on and just know what's happening, and it works. And our UI maybe looks like we haven't changed it since 2013, but in the back end, we've been working really hard so that trades, go fast, deposits and withdrawals process quickly. So that's what I want everyone to take, is that Gate.io, it's easy to use, quick, and it's gonna work. And we're gonna be expanding a lot, and you're gonna be hearing a lot more from us in the near future.
So tell us, you're expanding where, and what are we going to be seeing from Gate in terms of the expansion?
So we just, you're going to be seeing a lot more collaboration with Bitcoin Wednesday. And we've opened up our office in South Korea. So we really see that as a critical market. We are looking into opening up in a new jurisdiction that's more crypto-friendly. So there's a lot happening in that front, and people may have heard of Malta and Switzerland and things that are happening in Japan as well. So I think this fall is going to be a very, there's going to be a lot of things happening in this fall, and we are going to be positioning ourselves to make a lot of announcements coming up in the fall.
Great. So thank you very much, Virgilio.
Thank you, Richard.